Hi, my name is Shan Fu and I am from Team 7. On behalf of the team, I will be bringing you through our leave processing application system today. The presentation will be split into 4 parts. The first part will entail a walkthrough of all the use cases that are implemented in our leave system. In our leave application system, there are 3 roles, namely admin, employee, and manager. As you will see later in my demo, these roles will be performing tasks that are essential in a leave application process. To reflect how the system will work in the real world, this walkthrough will be conducted in a manner that reflects the end-to-end workflow of leave application. In the second part of the video, I will be going through the entity relationship diagram and providing more details about how our database is organized and the relationship between the entities. In the third part of the video, I will be going into the code to share about how they are organized generally and also to highlight some interesting parts. Finally, I will end the presentation with a summary of how the project was implemented, the architecture layer, the technology involved, and some learning points. Imagine that this is a brand new leave system that has been set up for your company. In order for the system to even be used first, someone will need to help set it up by populating it with the data needed for the system to even be functional. For example, all employees in the company will need to have an account. All the leave schemes in the company will need to be registered on the system. These responsibilities are played by an admin role, and I will now log in as an admin to show you how all these are done. This is the login page of the system. Before logging into the system, all users, including the admin, will need to enter his username or password. In this case, our current user is an admin, and his username is also admin, and his password is password123. With the correct password and username, he is now logged in, and he is now brought to the home page. In our system, we assume that the person performing the admin role is also an employee of the company. He will therefore be able to see whatever an employee can see, such as leave balance, his personal leave applications record. He can also apply for annual leave, medical leave, or even overtime claim via the homepage. On top of that, he will also be able to see functions that are only accessible to an admin role over here via the navigation bar. Specifically, these functions will include creating new users, viewing all users that have been created, creating new leave schemes, maintaining the existing leave scheme tables, maintaining public holiday tables. Let's now go deeper into each of them now. In a company, it is often common for it to offer different types of leave schemes to people of different seniority. Before a user can even be created, an admin will need to first set up the leave scheme first, and he can do so by going to the navigation bar and clicking over here, Create New Leave Scheme. The process is simple. Enter the leave scheme name, the number of annual leave days entitlement, the number of medical leave the person is entitled to. Once done, just click submit, and the new leave scheme will appear here. For the creation of user, the admin will need to go to the navigation bar and click on the Create New User tab. He will be then brought to this page to fill in the user details. So imagine we have a new employee called Mary. We'll select her user role. In this case, Mary is just a normal employee. Enter more details about Mary. Select her leave scheme. In some occasion, we may need to prorate her leave. So in this case, instead of having the leave scheme automatically decide how many days of leave Mary has, we will need to manually enter it. We will select her manager. Click on Create Staff. Mary, the user, will now have been created. Lastly, another key function of admin in this system is the maintenance of public holidays. To do this, the admin can again go to the navigation bar to click on Maintain public holiday tables. Employees often like to apply for annual leave that overlap with public holidays. The system will need to have a record of all the holiday dates so that it can discount the date as a deduction should there be an overlap. To make the admin life easier, we have included a connection to an external API called Calendarific that the system can call whenever the admin clicks on the refresh table. At the same time, he can also manually add in public holidays. This will cater for public holidays that are declared in shorter notice, such as general elections in Singapore, and will unlikely be available in the API database. Once you click submit, you will be able to find the general election public holiday here. I will now move on to the perspective of an employee. Robert is a normal employee in the company. We will now log in using his account. After logging in, he will again be brought to the landing page. So to apply for leave, he can directly just click on the button, apply for annual medical leave here. To submit a new leave, the employee will need to first choose the leave type he is applying for. Then select the start date and end date. Enter any comments that he wants his boss to take notice of. Select the person that is going to cover his work. Check the box if he's overseas. And if he is going overseas, he also need to enter his contact details. In the event he fails to do it, the system will remind him that contact details is mandatory. Once he clicks submit leave, the leave would have been submitted and routed to his boss. To review those leave applications Robert has submitted, Robert can click on Leave Applications record to view all his previous applications. Over here, he can see those leaves that are previously submitted and their respective status. If a leave is already approved, he can either view or cancel it. If a leave is applied but not reviewed by his manager yet, he can either view, update, or delete. If a leave is already rejected or cancelled, he can only view them. This will satisfy the two requirements of manage leave application and view personal leave history. An employee can also apply for overtime claim via the system, which will add to the overtime ledger, which is calculated in hours. To do so, he can click on the apply for overtime claim button. For overtime, the employee just needs to fill in three things: the date which the overtime is performed, the number of hours performed, and any additional remarks that he wants his boss to take note of. On the right side of the page, we have also included existing applications to allow the user to view recent overtime claims he has already applied for. Once ready, he can click submit and the claim will again be routed to his boss. After the overtime claim is submitted and approved by the manager, the employee can view his total leave balance by clicking on the personal leave balance button. Backend, the system will automatically convert the hours into compensation leave if sufficient numbers are accumulated. For example, if in total 9 hours of overtime claim are approved, it will automatically be converted into 1 day of compensation leave and an additional unconverted hour of OT claim in the ledger. This is because 8 hours of overtime is equivalent to 1 day of leave, and there still remains an hour of unconverted overtime. To apply for compensation leave, again, the user can click on the Apply for Compensation Leave button here. The form looks slightly different from the normal annual leave, medical leave form. Over here, the form allows for half-day leave application through the AM/PM selection. Apart from that, the rest of the features are similar to the apply for annual leave form. We will now move on to the perspective of user Sarah, who is the manager of Robert and a few of his colleagues. Again, Sarah will need to enter her username and password to log in. Once logged in, she will then see the same thing as her employee Robert, but the only difference is that as a manager, the navigation bar will also show manager-related functions. For Sarah, the first thing as a manager she will need to do is to approve her staff's leave applications. So she can click on pending staff leave applications and she will be brought to all the leaves that have not been approved. On this page, she will be able to see all the different type of leaves submitted by all her employees. She can also filter her search based on keywords. For her convenience, she can also sort the table according to the view that she wants. To view individual leave application, she can click on View and the page will then list down all the application related info. On the right side of the page, to aid her in the decision-making process, she will also be provided with the leave applications of all her other staffs that are conflicting. For decision-making, Sarah just needs to indicate if she approves or rejects the application. If she decides to reject, she will be required to fill in the approval remarks text box. Once she submits the form, the approval rejection will be recorded. If Sarah wishes to, she can also generate leave report in the form of CSV file for her team by clicking on the Generate Leave Report button. Before generating the report, she can actually filter her requirements based on name, leave type, start date and end date. Lastly, the leave application system also has an API which an external third-party application may call over the web. The following short walkthrough shows a very simple web application built using React consuming the REST API for submitting overtime claims on the LeaveSystem. See later, the API is protected by authentication key protection. So, a third-party system will need to have an API key in order to send data over. We have now come to the second part of the discussion where I will discuss about our ERD diagram for the project. In total, our database consists of 10 tables. The first two tables I will focus on are employee and user. The employee table is used to hold the information of all employees in a company. It has a self-referencing relationship with itself, as the manager ID column is a foreign key that references back to the employee table. An employee can have 0 or 1 manager. On the other hand, an employee who happens to be a manager can have 0 or many subordinates who are also employees. Now we'll look at the user table. For the user table, this table holds all the user account information, including the username and password. Every user is linked to only one employee, and one employee can only have one user account. Now, let's take a look at the overtime records table. This table is used to hold all the overtime application records. One employee can have 0 to many overtime applications, but one application can only belong to one employee. Now, let's take a look at the leave scheme table. This table is used to hold all the leave scheme tables in the company. In the context of this project, the client company only has 2 types of leaves, one for professional staff and the other one for administrative staff. In terms of relationship, one employee can have only one leave scheme, but one leave scheme can have many employees subscribing to it. Now, let's take a look at role type. One user can have many role types. On the other hand, one role type can also have many users. In this regard, we are looking at a many-to-many relationship, and this is reflected by having a third table, user roles, in our database. Now, let's take a look at leave application table. This table holds all the leave applications information submitted by employees in the LeaveSystem. One employee can have many leave applications, but one leave application can only belong to one employee. Now, let's take a look at the leave types table. In total, there are 3 types of leaves in the client's company. They are, namely, annual leave, medical leave, and compensation leave. A leave application can only have one leave type. However, a leave type can actually have many leave applications. Lastly, we also have a public holiday table to hold all the dates of public holidays. This table does not have any relationship with any other table in the database. Similarly, for the API key table, this table does not have any relationship with any other table in the database. The API key table holds all the API authentication keys that are issued to third-party applications calling the REST API, which form part of the leave application processing system. We have now come to the third section of the presentation, where I will briefly share about the leave application system code architecture. At the same time, I will also use this opportunity to highlight some interesting parts of our code. In terms of architecture, we have organized the application into a few layers, namely the controller layer, the model layer, the service layer, repository layer, and finally the templates/view layer. For the code to run efficiently, we have also introduced an interceptor, validator, and also created a utility folder to store all the commonly shared utilities. In terms of how the application works, the interceptor middleware basically intercepts all HTTP requests to check if there is a valid user session. If there is a valid session, the user request will be allowed to reach the respective controller to be handled. The controller layer will subsequently call the service layer to perform all the business logic and, if necessary, activate the repository layer to interact with the database. Once the controller gets all the data and output required, it can then pass it to the view to be processed. If there isn't one valid user session, the user will be redirected to the login page. I will now also use this opportunity to share about some interesting parts of the code. Firstly, given that holidays and weekend are not calculated as part of someone's leave if the total number of days are below 14, we will need some kind of logic to handle this. This calculation is actually done in the leave application model, where the get duration method will help to filter out public holidays and weekend if it's below 14 days. Another interesting part of our code involves the building of a REST API to allow an external application such as an employee time tracking app to interact with the leave application system. The API implemented is targeted at the create new OT claim use case, whereby an OT claim application can be submitted by calling the REST API. Required query parameters for calling the API include the API authentication key, staff ID, OT date, OT hours, and additional remarks useful for a manager in the decision-making process. Another interesting part of our code which I would like to highlight is regarding the calling of external APIs to help the admin with the maintenance of the public holiday table. What will happen is that the admin user will trigger a pull public holiday data request by clicking a button on the user interface. The request will hit the controller and then trigger the public holiday service layer. As can be seen here, the public service layer will call the API from calendarific to populate the public holiday table. This will make the life of the admin easier, as the admin doesn't need to manually type in all the dates. Lastly, another interesting part of our code involves the exporting of the leave report. This is done by calling a CSV export service layer, which converts the data requested by the manager after calling the repository into a CSV file. We have now come to the last part of the presentation. I will now briefly talk about how the team has distributed the work among each other, our architecture layers, the technologies we use, and a summary of the key lessons we have learned. In terms of work distribution, the project commences with the team coming together to define the ERD and entity classes first. Once these are finalized and the overall skeleton of how the application architecture is going to be done out, the entire team, which is made up of 7 members, are split into 3 sub-teams to look after all the use cases under each role, namely employee, admin, and manager. Joaquin and Zhao Tong belong to the employee team, and both of them would further split the responsibility among them. Hakim, De Wei, and Han would belong to the second team, and again, the 3 of them had also split the responsibility of developing the manager use cases among themselves. The last team, made up of Pei-An and myself, would look after the use cases under the admin function. While each member has a specific set of use cases to look after, many members actually contributed beyond their primary responsibility by helping each other and taking on the implementation of functions that don't fit neatly within the 3 roles. Next, in terms of architecture, the leave application system comprises the controller layer, the service layer, the repository layer, the templates or view layer, the model layer, and some common utilities. An interceptor is also implemented to handle the validation of user session, since all controllers basically require this. We have also implemented a REST API so that external applications can also interact directly with the Leave application system without having to use the browser user interface. In terms of technology, these are the key technological stacks used for the project. For the Leave application system, we have built it using Java Spring Boot. The application would also call third-party APIs such as Calendarific. For the database, MySQL was used. In terms of code management, GitHub was used. Lastly, we have also built a client application using React.js to test the REST API in the Leave application system. So overall, it was a very good experience for the team as we learned many new things that will be important for the preparation of our AD project. In general, these lessons learned highlighted the importance of having a good process management system, and while highlighting the importance of having strong teamwork and positive dynamics. In terms of process management, we learned that there needs to be an SOP for code management and version control. There needs to be a consistent and routine effort to upgrade the code base and not wait too long to merge each other code. The reason is because merging code can often be quite a messy process, and the longer you wait, basically the bigger the mess. Lastly, setting deadlines and defining requirements clearly are also important component of process management, as they ensure that all team members are able to contribute effectively. In terms of team dynamics, this project, given its very tight deadline, highlighted how the team is only as good as its weakest link. Given that one person individual code alone is pretty much useless if the entire system or project can't be put together, the team must therefore come together to help each other, regardless if you are better or weaker in terms of technical skills. Given that every resource is important, it is also important to define everyone's role and responsibility clearly to maximize resources. Lastly, we also learned that given time is scarce, meetings and discussions must be conducted as efficiently as possible, and this can be achieved by having everyone being clear about the questions that are to be addressed at each meeting. We have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you, and I hope you have enjoyed it.